Well, hey everyone. Today we are going to talk about cleaning and unloading our muzzle loaders. Let's say it's the end of the season and you need to unload your muzzle loader, but you do not want to fire it because hunting season is going to start up in a couple days, either rifle or shotgun. Here in New England, where I hunt, we have muzzleloader season first, and then we go into our shotguns. Many states do the opposite. So we're going to talk about the proper way to unload a muzzleloader without firing it. Or let's say you have to unload your muzzleloader because you fell in the mud or you got something obstructing the barrel, or for whatever reason you shot your muzzleloader and the bullet did not exit the barrel. Typically, I am going to be focusing on the CVA Optimal, although most of your brake barrels are going to follow the same protocol. So this is the CVA Optima V2. The Wolves are basically the same, and most of your brake barrels the same. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the proper way to unload first without firing. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your hammer is not in the cocked position. Typically, you might have a primer in here. If you break this open with the hammer in the cocked position, you risk hitting the primer and firing your gun, which could be dangerous. I am going to link in the description, if I can find the videos, of where they demonstrate blowing up these guns and what happens if you have a barrel obstruction or an improper load. So what you want to do is you want to grab your hammer, squeeze the trigger, and then very slowly release so it doesn't slam against the primer. Then, depending on how your gun opens, some have a button here. This one happens to open up by the trigger guard here. You're going to pull that back. What you want to do is either the button in front or mine's the trigger guard. You want to pull it back, break it open. Then you want to remove your primer. There is a tool that comes with it, or you can use your fingers. If it don't want to come out, I suggest using the tool. Now your gun is safely unloaded. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to show you how to actually eject your bullets first. Now, your breech plug, you never want to use a tool. You always want to have it finger loose. Never tighten it with a tool, never loosen it with a tool. So first you want to tilt your gun downward, unscrew your breech plug, and it's going to take several turns. You want to set this aside on a clean surface, and then I'm going to put my hand here and actually eject my pellets. So I just dropped my 2 pellets out of the gun. Now we're going to go through ejecting the actual bullet. So I'm going to set this down on a flat surface so that it's easier to work with. So now I'm going to take my ramrod out of the gun and I'm going to screw my extender on. The reason why is because the ramrod, I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, does not go all the way to the end of your barrel on these Optimas or the Wolves. So you actually need your extender. So I'm going to screw my extender on. I always want to go in the direction that the gun fires. So I'm going to start back at the breech plug. I'm going to carefully insert it until I feel it hit the end of the bullet. And then I'm just going to... So in order for me to get the leverage I need, I had to stand my gun on the end. I'm going to insert my ramrod in the back in the direction that it fires. And then you don't want to pound, you just want to... Okay, So sometimes the bullet wants to be stubborn like mine and not actually come out the direction that it fires. So I'm going to try going in through the other way as if I'm loading the gun. And I'm just going to push it through. So depending on how stubborn your gun's going to be, they really suggest unloading it the same direction that the gun fires. But sometimes if your gun's stubborn or the bullet's stubborn like mine, I had to go in and just continuing pushing it through as if I was loading it. So now that I got my gun all safely unloaded, the pellet has been ejected, the bullets have been ejected, I can inspect my bullet. If there is any sort of damage at all to either the plastic or the lead itself or the tip, I do not want to keep this because this will cause problems when firing. It also can cause inaccurate shots. So if there's any sort of damage at all, I would go ahead and discard it. So now we're going to go through and actually clean our gun. The products I'm going to use today is I'm going to use what's called CVA anti-seize stick. This is for your breech plug. This will be a second step, which I'll get into. And I'm also going to use CVA barrel blaster foaming bore cleaner. There is a gel version of this. I am not familiar with the gel version. I've only used the foam version. So the reason why I use the barrel blaster by CVA, first of all, is specifically made by CVA, a muzzleloading company for muzzleloaders. Second of all, you want to read right here where it says dissolves. This is very important because this one says it dissolves black powder fouling, which is the spent black powder and crusting that occurs in your barrel and on your breech plug. Plastic residue. Reason why plastic residue is so important, because most of your modern day power belt bullets that people fire or the sabots. Now, I'm not talking about the old musket balls with the patch plugs. Most people fire bullets these days. So as you can see, this is a power belt hollow point. It has a plastic cup on the end. This takes place of the wadding or the shooting patch of the old musket balls and the old slugs. Same thing with your power belt bullets. It has the plastic on the end. Sabots are a little bit different. They're more of a slug that will actually sit inside of a plastic sleeve. What happens is when you shoot your muzzleloader and the powder burns, when your bullet goes through the barrel, it will cause some of the plastic tip, some of the copper or lead around it, and the plastic to melt, which actually ends up inside your barrel. And that's how you get fouling, that's how you get buildup, that's how you get residue. That can cause for inaccurate shots, it can cause your bullets to get stuck. It can also cause corrosion on your barrel. So that's why I use the barrel blaster. Like I said, it comes with a gel. I never use the gel. I've only used the foam myself. So the way I go ahead and clean my muzzleloader, I will go ahead and take a cleaning patch. Now typically I rip these in half because the size I have is a little bit bigger because I use them for my shotguns as well. Because what you want to do is you want to actually wrap it around the end of your ramrod, and they're a little bit thick. Most of them are actually a little bit thick to use, so you want to rip them in half or cut them in half so that you can actually wrap them around your ramrod. Now I want to take the foam. Now like I said, when you clean, you always want to go in the direction that it fires. So I'm going to spray this in the breech plug end. I'm going to take my ramrod, wrap the patch around it, and I'm going to go in through the back end. Just slide it in, give it a little bit of a twisting action so that it really makes sure that it cleans. And then I'm going to take the ramrod and I'm going to push it all the way through, twisting as I go. I'm going to go to the muzzle side, take the patch off, and pull the ramrod the rest of the way out. So that's what I call the wet pass. And as you can see, this gun has been fired once without cleaning it because I got a buck earlier this year and I immediately reloaded in case I had to put a second shot into it. So as you can see how dirty this patch is just from one firing. This is the wet pass. Now I'm going to take a second sheet. I'm going to put it over the ramrod again. And this is what I call the dry pass. I'm not going to foam this time. I'm just going to insert it in, give it a couple good turns, make sure I get past the threading. And then I'm going to go ahead, push it through, twist, giving it a little bit of twisting as I go. I do not suggest using metal brushes. Some people like to. I'm afraid that I'm actually going to score my barrel, so I don't do it. I only use patches. Or you can use the foam ones, the woolly furry type of cleaning tips. I don't like those because after the third washing they tend to fall apart. I might as well just get the patches. So I'm going to go ahead and push that through. So as you can see, after the dry pass, I still got a bunch of black residue on here. Muzzleloading is a dirty, dirty way of shooting a gun. It's a very dirty powder. They sell the white hots. I have not shot my white hots yet, but I am told they're just as dirty. The only difference is instead of being black, they're going to be white, which means it's going to be hard to see on your cleaning patch if your gun is still dirty. Typically, I have found it takes 3 passes wet, 3 passes dry before my patch comes out clean. So now that I showed you how to do a pass, I am not going to take you through the entire process of doing the next 2, but I'll show you what a clean patch should look like. Okay, so like I said, muzzle loading is very, very dirty when it comes to firing. If you notice, I had a piece of paper towel that was down on the shooting side of my barrel when I was cleaning and ejecting it. These spots right here is just the foam that was coming out the other end as I was pushing the ramrod through the barrel. If you would notice, and I don't know if the camera is going to pick up the full view of this, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passes through the barrel. This column is wet. This column is dry. And notice how dirty the first time is all the way through the 6th pass. So I'm going to hold these up to the camera so you can get a full view of how dirty your gun will be just after one firing. This is first pass. This is first pass, wet, dry. Second pass, wet, dry. Third pass, wet, dry. Fourth pass, wet, dry. Fifth pass, notice how dirty I still am after 5 passes through the barrel, wet, dry. Now I just finished the 6th pass through the barrel. You can see I still got barely some residue on there, and dry is still some residue but almost clean. I could probably do a 7th or 8th pass on this. Mostly this is just wet, but there is still some residue. Plus I'm getting these patches dirty by handing them because as you can see I've got the residue on my hands. Some people wear gloves. So if you really want to get crystal clear, you want to do probably about 7 or 8 passes, depending on how dirty of a shot you're firing. There's something else I also want to show you so that you can see how clean your gun is. So typically what I do at this point is I will take my muzzle loader, I will hold it up pointing at a ceiling light, or I will hold it out pointing at another light, and I will actually sit here and look through the barrel. Basically what I'm looking for with the light shining down the barrel is I want to see absolutely no visible residue in there. And in which this case I do not, so I feel confident that my gun is pretty well clean. All I'm seeing is silver, and that's because I have a silver barrel. I do not have a blue barrel. This is stainless steel on your Ultima and your Wolves. I do not see any residue. I see all silver. I do not see any black fouling. I do not see any plastic. So I am confident right now that my barrel is totally clean. Next, we're going to talk about cleaning your breech plug and your breech area. So I'm going to set this down again on my paper towels. And again, I want to use paper towels, newspaper, or something to actually capture all the grime. I do want to show you this real quick. On here, you see all those powder residue specks. That is just from pulling the breech plug. Again, muzzle loading is a very, very dirty sport on a gun. So what I'm going to do now to clean my breech area and my breech plug is I'm going to take another cleaning patch. Again, I'm going to use the same foam dissolving, because remember, what ejects through here is burnt powder that will cause fouling when you pull your plug. Black powder is also very corrosive. That's why you want to make sure that you go through and clean all very well all in this area. Even your synthetic powders like your Pyrodex, or in this case, I shoot the 777 pellets, or also you have your 777 granules that people shoot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, spray some of this foam cleaner, just kind of rub it in, and I'm just going to go ahead, rub out all this area in here. Make sure that I actually get it down to the silver. I'm going to go ahead, stick it in the back end with my finger. Make sure I'm getting all around the actual threads where the breech plug goes in. So as you can see, that's dirty area as well. This pod here, I'm going to do several wets before I do dry, just because I really want to make sure I clean this out, because this is the most, besides your barrel, this is probably the dirtiest part of the gun, because this is where all your spent powder actually sits when firing. Not too worried about too much about taking off the anti-seize or the grease at this point, because I'm going to reapply it. When your gun comes from the factory, it's going to have a silver silicone on it. It's pretty much the same thing as the anti-seize, just a little bit cleaner. I'm going to show you how the anti-seize is a little bit messier to use. I'm still trying to locate the silicone that they actually use in the factory when they ship these. But this anti-seize works pretty well, and that's what CVA makes, and that's what they suggest. All right, so that's pretty good cleaning. Second patch wet. Now I'm going to go dry. And again, I'm just going to go ahead, wipe everywhere that I cleaned with the patch. I don't want to leave any of this foaming aside, because we don't want any fouling when we shoot. I'm not going to do this in the house, but the next time you take your gun out, what they do suggest is do not load it. Do not put any powder or bullets in it. Just put one primer, shoot the primer to the ground so that you can show that shows any leaves moving. This way here, you will actually get rid of any oil or any moisture that could be up against your breech plug, your breech, or your barrel. This gun's getting ready to be put away for the season. So I might take it outside and do that, although I live in an area that's pretty populated, and if anybody knows shooting a primer, it sounds like a 22 going off. So I may not do that. I may just make sure that it's good and dry before I put it away. So go ahead and cleaning it with a dry patch. My dry patch is starting to come out pretty clean, so I feel confident that this is clean. Although I do got one area I'm going to hit with the foam a little bit more. Back here where the firing pin is, kind of noticing it's still looking a little bit dirty to me, so I'm just going to hit it one more time. In order to get in there really good, I'm going to halfway close my brake action so that I can really get in there with the patch. Yeah, there was still a lot of powder in there. A lot of powder around the firing pin area. Alright, my patch is coming out clean, but I still got some discoloration, so I think that's probably discoloration at this point. So I'm just going to take a dry patch and dry it all up. So at this point, because it's totally clean, I am done with the gun itself, and I'm going to move on to the breech plug. As you can see, if I can get my camera to focus, as you can see, my breech plug is totally dirty. I've got a lot of black in here, got a lot of powder black in here. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clean patch, I'm going to spray some foam on it, and I'm just going to mark this breech plug. And I want to make sure if you have fingernails, that's good. Otherwise, if you don't, you just want to take an object, not something too sharp, because you want to make sure that you're actually getting around the rim as well here, and also the whole way the spark comes out from the primer. You want to make sure that is totally clean. So I'm just going to mark it with the foam until I do not see any more black on there and it's totally silver. I'm going to go ahead and do my threads as well, because powder gets on the threads. Like I said, don't worry about it. I'm going to be putting the CVA anti-seize on here to protect and make my threads a lot easier. So I got my threads totally clean, except for a little spot right there. There we go. So now my breech plug is totally clean. So I'm going to take a dry one, make sure I get all the foam residue off. Now comes the next and really important step. You want to make sure your breech plug never gets stuck on you. After you fire your gun a few times, your breech plug will become hard to actually unscrew. If you leave it sitting, you could get rust in here, even though it's stainless steel, and your breech plug is going to get hard to screw and unscrew. And like I said, you never want to use a tool. It's always got to be finger loose, finger tight. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this product. It's called Anti-Seize Stick by CVA. This is a kind of like a black grease. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I wish I could find the gray graphite stuff that they use at the factory, but this is what they sell over the counter and what they recommend. Basically, it's like a chapstick. And as you can see, I used mine a couple times already. That's why it's ground down. It's like a chapstick. You turn the bottom and it comes up. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and coat the threads of your breech plug. So I'm just going to take it like a chapstick. Just kind of rub it on there good. Make sure I get all in the threads. And yes, like I said, this is kind of messy. This is not my favorite product, but this is what the factory recommends and what the factory sells. All right, so once I got my threads all coated, okay, the camera's going to pick this up. It's kind of hard to see because I'm wearing a black shirt. I'm going to put the paper towel behind it. As you can see, the threads are all coated with it. I'm just going to wipe off around where the actual cup is for the pellets, or if you're shooting a cupped one for the granules, I'm just going to wipe that off, and I'm just going to wipe off any of the excess blobs from rubbing it on there. Now, what I want to do is I want to take the butt end of my gun where the breech plug goes in, and I'm going to go ahead and put my breech plug in. And like I said, you want this to be finger loose. It's going to feel a little bit sticky. After the first couple times you fire a gun, you're going to feel the stickiness of your breech plug going in. But this is what the anti-seize is for. So the reason why I'm screwing it in right now is I want to go ahead and make sure that I coat the threads that are inside the barrel. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the breech plug. And as you can see, it's got all down within the threads. This is another crucial step right here. Right here you can see I got a bunch of blobs from where it caked up from screwing it in and actually getting it down in the thread. I just want to either take a paper towel or another cleaning patch and just get rid of these blobs, because I do not want this actually going down inside of my barrel, because this could actually affect your powder when you shoot. And again, some got on where the actual powder pellets sit. I'm just going to wipe that out of there. Set my breech plug down. I'm going to take a look through the barrel and the light again. I do not see any blobs past the threading, which is good. So that tells me that it only got on the threading. There's a little bit of blob right here that's kind of like sticking out. I'm just going to wipe that off. And then I'm good to put my breech plug back in. And now this gun is ready to be safely fired or safely put away for the season. So I hope you enjoyed this video about how to safety unload an obstructed barrel, whether it be mud or your bullet didn't eject all the way for whatever reason, or you got some sort of debris in there. Again, in the description, I'm going to try to find the videos and link them that actually shows people purposely blowing up these guns because of improper loads, something stuck in the barrel, or even mud. Show you how dangerous it would be. So this is how you safely unload your muzzleloader. Typically the CVA Optima V2 or the Wolf, or pretty much any brake barrel inline muzzleloader. So we safely unload it. We went through the entire cleaning process. My barrel's nice and clean. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you either out in the woods or possibly back in the studio. Depends on the weather. I've still got shotgun season for deer coming up. I've got 8 days worth of that here in Rhode Island. Unless you have permission for private land, then it extends a little bit longer. Or you hunt zone 2, which extends a little bit longer. And then I'm going to be doing some small game hunting in between time in a different area. And then we got ice fishing coming up. And then before you know it, I'm going to be back to my regular schedule of hiking and kayaking. This year is just flying by. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.